Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Breakthrough. So good to be here. Are you okay, Sean? Okay. All right. One of those days.
It's one of those days.
No problem.
Under the weather. Hopefully it's not COVID or dengue.
Why did you all seat me next to this man? Anyway.
You chose to be here. You chose to be here.
Okay. And with that being said,
Yep.
the maybe infectious man right next to me, hopefully not. I just think the Sahara dust is punching you in the face today.
Nah.
I think that's the case.
Nah.
I think that's the case. We're not going to mention the swarm of mosquitoes.
I mean, if you want to, ignorance is bliss.
Okay, and in my ignorance.
Not something I should say on my other show, folks, but we'll get away with it here on Breakthrough somehow.
Shawn Michael Small, a man with no boundaries and no borders. But anyway, speaking of borders, the conversation that we have in store for you all is quite interesting. So we have with us musician and conductor, internationally qualified and acclaimed musician and conductor, somebody who I am personally very proud of, Andrew Samuel. Good morning, Andrew.
Hi, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So you're from Trinidad. You did your bachelor's in music at the UE Department of Creative and Festival Arts, right? We were only like a couple years or a year or two apart. And you went on to further your studies abroad. Tell us about that journey a little bit.
Well, yeah, you covered the initial part of it. So I did the bachelor's at UE, and in the final year, I was wondering what I'm going to do after I graduated. And I spoke to Mr. Murray, who was then the head of the department, and he was suggesting possibly looking into graduate degree programs. And I knew that he went to Temple, so I considered it. And the piano programs that Temple had, they had solo piano, but then they also had a collab piano, which gave you the opportunity to either work with instrumentalists or singers. And at that time, I was doing a lot of vocal accompanying. I was doing work with Lydians. I did a couple sessions with the Love Movement. I did individual freelance work with singers on the island. So I thought, might as well do the focus that gives me the opportunity to work with singers, because if you know, it's a viable career opportunity, it's quite lucrative, and then I didn't know, but I'm really grateful now that when I actually did come to the US to do the master's in collab piano and opera coaching, it gave me the option to really immerse myself in opera, which came with diction coaching, studies in how to be a rehearsal pianist for operatic productions, and then midway through the master's as well too, I fell in love with conducting, and so I did conducting studies, opera conducting studies. I even did a little bit of choral conducting, just to try to test the waters as much as possible. And yeah, so I did the collab piano degree at Temple here in Philadelphia, which was 2 years. And then after that, I applied for work authorization. They call it OPT. So I got that. I worked for a year as a pianist and as a freelance conductor as well. I'm towards the end of that year now, and then I prepare to go off to Maryland in the fall to do my doctorate in conducting at the University of Maryland. So that's where I'm at now.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Samuel, some might say, you know, you have gone abroad, taken your skills, and flew away, literally, on a jet plane. Don't know when you'll be back again. Some might say you have left your country behind. You have betrayed us. But the flip side of that is you are looking to have a career in a field that, well, first of all, you're looking at opportunities. And artistic opportunities, they're not as easy. It's not as though you could just be an entrepreneur and say, I'm going to be a musician. That is a highly contested field. But you're also looking at something very specialized as well, to some extent anyway. And these are not necessarily opportunities that you're going to find here. What does it mean to you to, first of all, be able to just, you know, to follow this path that you might not have even necessarily known was available to you when you started with your bachelor's however many years before?
That's a good question, and I think the answer to that question is connected to when I decided to go into music full-time at the very beginning. Because my initial plan before even doing the bachelor's at UE was to study what might be considered a safer route for career. I was planning to do like accounting and business stuff, and you know, I think the work opportunities in that route is a bit easier. But then I reached a point in Form 6 at St. George's College where I was like, no, I spend my days thinking about music, and at that point, you know, like really focusing so much on playing the piano. That one day I had a conversation with my mom, and I told her, you know, I want to go into music full time. And this is all tied to my religious belief in my family that when God has a specific plan for you, you know, you want to try to be sensitive and go along with it. So I think the opportunities to study music now and to do piano and coming to the States, and because as you rightly said, it's very difficult now as a musician to get a lot of work opportunities, even in the US. More so as a conductor, because I think it's easier to, if you're a pianist, to get an instrument and to get like work opportunities in a church or a synagogue, or even with singers or musical theater productions, but no one is like really handing you an orchestra to conduct. But that being said, because I was, you know, at that point in time, we believed that this was the plan that God had for us, and for me to do the master's and then come to the States and study. It's not that opportunities just kind of fell in my lap, but I followed a specific trajectory that, in which case I prepared myself for the opportunities that God had for me. So one way is that coming to do the master's at Temple, I got into contact by chance with some friends. I was there, for instance, a really hardcore example is I was the rehearsal pianist for the choral conducting seminar at Temple, because I really wanted to immerse myself in conducting. And by chance, one of the professor announced there was this reading orchestra that meets every week, and encouraging the choral conductors to go. And I was really interested, so I went. And then again, I met the director of the orchestra. We spoke, we became really good friends, and I really started to conduct. I got the position of vice president of the orchestra the next year, and through him, he sent me on the last day of the apprenticeship the opportunity to get the Philadelphia Ballet conducting apprenticeship. And that, again, it was not a planned thing. It came through the grapevine. And in my opinion, I think all of that came from being sensitive to, well, God wants me to do this degree, come here. And the reason why I say it's God as well too is I got the flight to come to do the master's at a time when flights was closing in Trinidad. It was during the height of the COVID season. And my initial flight got canceled, and right before the date was going to close for me to leave, I got another flight, and then I came, as you said, on a jet, not literally a jet, but I came on a plane, and I started the degree. So that's a very long-winded way of saying I think when God has a plan for you, it might seem difficult on a very practical level, but it somehow works out. It works out, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's really, I can't help but feel somewhat inspired by your story, because in many ways, you know, the initial plan was to do the master's, and then things just sort of, I know you won't say, but I will say, things just kind of fell into place.
Accelerated.
Right? Accelerated.
Because it sounds like I'm in a similar situation. You kind of got the job you was getting the education for in the first place, but you ain't necessarily finished the education when you got the job.
No.
Right. And so, what are some of the? So I guess it'll be fair to say you were focused on the one thing, and because you're so focused on the one thing and you're focused on learning, and to quote you just now, you said immerse yourself into the thing, because conducting was a very new thing for you, right? You'd done piano for a very, very long time, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that you picked up on, but it was something that you're definitely interested in. And there's a certain sense of humility and a certain sense of innocence that someone has to have in order to fully, when you're willing to fully immerse yourself into something that is very, very new, right? What are some of the key things that you would have learned along those journeys? Because obviously you would know people down here, you would have met people abroad, and you would have talked and, you know, compared notes and people's journeys. But in your own experience, what are some of the things that you learned?
That's a great question, because it took me a long time to be bold enough to say that I want to go into conducting. As you said, for years I was a pianist, and you know, I was well enough on the instrument to be able to get by working with singers to have a career. But then, yeah, I reached a point where I couldn't think about anything but not only just the act of moving my hand, but the symphonic repertoire. And the nice thing about being in the US is that there are, and particularly being attached to a larger university, is that there are opportunities for people who want to expand to do other things. I think that's one of the difficulties about having a passion for, let's say, conducting in Trinidad, because we have, at least as far as I know, we have the Youth Philharmonic and we have the National Philharmonic, and then the National Steel Ensemble, but there aren't as much orchestral conducting opportunities for people who might be interested in this field. So when I came here, and particularly being at Temple, where and that reading orchestra, the aim of the reading orchestra was to give young conductors who had never conducted before an opportunity to step on the podium in a very inclusive, warm environment, where you know, even if mistakes occur, you're amongst your peers, and everyone is there knowing that you're there to learn as well as have fun. And I remember the first piece of music I conducted with that ensemble. It was Wagner's Siegfried. And I mean, for anyone that knows, if you're now starting conducting, Wagner is not the person you really start with. But somehow I got through the excerpt I got, and the musicians, you know, they smiled at me in the end. So that was enough encouragement to keep going. And I mean, you know, in my case, because the master's degree was in piano, I had to sort of finagle my way and try to include conducting as much as possible. Because my classes were piano-based. The nice thing is that although my classes were piano-based, because I was doing opera coaching, the coach that I studied with, he knew that I was passionate about conducting, and so he gave me opportunities to conduct opera scenes. And, you know, my studies in diction, for instance, have been irreplaceable as a conductor, particularly in conducting opera. And that's why I think one of the insecurities that I think a lot of young conductors have, myself included back then, is that I'm in a master's degree in piano. Does that make me disadvantaged to be a conductor? And actually, the further I went along is when I realized that most of the top opera conductors and even symphonic conductors started with their degrees, or not even with a degree, but started as being pianists. And I just came back from Europe, where that's how it is there as well too. Most of the opera conductors started being repetiteurs in the opera house, and they coach the singers, and you know, and then they work their way up. So I'm not that far off from what it seems like the standard development for a conductor is. both in the US and outside of the US as well.
Okay, yes, because we had Natalia Duppel on the show before, and I asked her the question, if singing is your only skill as a musician, things might be a little bit difficult. And, you know, she went on to explain that as artists, we are all multi-skilled, right? And there are certain things that that immerses us into the career a little bit more effectively. And what you're describing there is sort of the same thing, because many of the conductors that you and I know, you know, they would have probably done started off with piano, or started off with like music education, right? And then they sort of evolved into being able to, and the thing is, you asked the question whether you said you had an insecurity of whether or not, just because I've done this, does that make me a conductor? And we really find out that conductors aren't just one thing. They aren't just conductors. They're usually music teachers. They're usually pianists or musicians. Otherwise, it doesn't have to necessarily be limited to piano. They're also very good. Some of them are very good vocal coaches. Some of them are singers themselves. You know, some of them could do all of the above. You know, so it's very interesting, and that's a point that I want to make for people out there who are thinking of getting into the music sphere, the artistic sphere, in the industry, and making a career out of it. You multi-skilled, multi-hyphenate is kind of the way to go. Is the nature of the game, right? Just because you're focused on one thing doesn't mean you have to do anything. You know, doesn't mean you can't branch out.
Well, and to connect with what you're saying, just a short quote that one of my teachers gave me that I think is very, that a lot of people should remember. In a more philosophical way, conducting is an extension of who you are as a person, just like how being a pianist is an extension of your personality on the instrument. But music in general, I think it was Brahms who said music is always about something. So that's something that I thought about a lot. Making music to a certain degree is an end in and of itself. But usually, another purpose for music is that music is a representation of other things. Joy, it could be sadness, it could be a celebration, it could be lament. So I think just like how music is very multifaceted and conducting is multifaceted, I think it's connected to our personalities as a person as well too.
Yeah, yes, I always say art needs to say something, and what is the space? And it's not just performance art. It could be any kind, or not just what we think of stereotypically as performance art. It could be any kind of expression, endeavor that has any sort of expression, including TV hosts, newspaper reporters to some extent, because writing a business document, right, or an academic, even more important document, still would have obviously and intrinsically a message, but your writing style should all go in line with the message. You know, like, you need to understand that even for academics out there. But one of the things that I did want to get, because you went abroad for an academic/artistic purpose, right? And it's interesting because you're going to touch on an aspect of art that is not culturally that deep or widespread in TNT. So you're going to essentially touch on rarely treaded ground here in the country. And you're starting, as you pointed out, you're not necessarily starting with all of this put in place right away. It's kind of falling into place at times. Mm-hmm. You're from TNT, you're from our culture. So I think what a lot of parents might want to know, even if they might not know they want to know it, how was that like, the integration of yourself? Because you said you got certain things from the grapevine. Usually the grapevine is your family, your friends, the network you've established over years. You're not rich and you have grapevine. What sorcery is this? You know, were you able to bridge the cultural gaps as someone who's newly migrated to the States? Because as others have kind of told me in the past, you know, at some point the language of music kind of allows us to bridge the differences. Well, part of the answer I think I gave already, as I said, when
when God has a plan for you, he puts people in your life for that. But another part is music draws people together. But I think what really worked for me a lot is the Trinidadian identity. Because one, you visually look different from the people around you. You sound different from the people around you. So that, I was fortunate to be in an environment where that was appreciated and celebrated. Whenever, for instance, being at Temple, people were always interested to hear me speak because of my accent. People were always interested to hear where I'm from. They're like, oh, where are you from? I'm hearing an accent. And then I go off to say, well, I'm from Trinidad. That's a Caribbean, that's a country in the Caribbean. And then it goes off into a whole long conversation that I tell them about my culture. And one of the things I'm very proud of is that, yes, coming from Trinidad, where we don't necessarily have a strong operatic culture, for instance. And that seems to be the route that I'm going in, given the last couple of jobs and experiences I had. I think that is actually a benefit rather than disadvantage, because for a while I thought, wow, a lot of these people in the operatic field have, they started at like 3-4 years, starting doing, exposed to the art forms, hearing bel canto opera or verismo for so long that it's in their system. We are not necessarily like that in the Caribbean. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that in itself causes a disadvantage, but it doesn't. The degree at Temple gave me the technical and knowledge-based information to be able to operate within the field. But then my Trinidadian culture, and I think a lot of people, they tell me one of the best feedback comments I get from my teachers and from the orchestra when I conduct, I'm usually clear, I would hope, but it's usually the energy that I bring to the ensemble, and I don't think that is a me thing personally. I think that came from my Trinidadian upbringing, because Trinidadian people are naturally very animated people, very exciting, very engaging people. We use our eyes a lot, and that serves as a big boost in my conducting an operatic career. I mean, in opera, the emotions are like usually, it's moving very fast. It's very animated. And I think coming from Trinidad, where, I follow on Instagram all of the content creators, and, I share it with my friends here in the US as well. And they love to see it. They love to hear the accent. They love to see how we, one of my roommates, for instance, he picked up from me because I say it a lot, boy, and I'm really open, and I do it in the orchestra as well too. Sometimes we were rehearsing we were doing Copeland's Hoedown Rodeo, Hoedown from the Sweet Rodeo, and this is what an orchestra in Ohio. And they got something, and the percussion section was just in the groove with the cellos, and out of nowhere, I just said, boy, in the rehearsal, and everybody, they laughed. And I think people, that actually serves as a major push forward in my career, as opposed to like holding me back, my Trinidadian personality. And cultural identity. I mean, alongside cooking the food, because,
of course.
I've been termed the curry maestro here because I cook, and, I'm very proud of that title, by the way.
I have to say this. So when eventually we're going to see some classical music TikToks where, they'll be grooving, and they'll just say, I said, boy, it'll be thanks to you. You will have successfully
What?
exported part of the culture.
The most hilarious part of that is because I can actually picture the moment when you said it. I can actually picture how the orchestra reacted and stuff like that. That is so hilarious.
I mean, I think locals might not understand because we'll take it for granted.
Yes.
Ah, boy. Because that expression sums it up right there in the pocket. You could feel there in the pocket.
Yes.
They could feel there in the pocket. But they have no idea what it is that you just said.
And I would say conducting is the less you can say and the more you can
show.
You can show is you're on the money. So in that case, me saying, boy, I didn't have to say to the orchestra, yes, good, let's do it like that a second time. They knew that that was where it was supposed to be, and it increases the satisfaction, it increases the enjoyment of the music, and that just makes the whole experience very positive and enjoyable.
Ironically, that directly answers at least part of my initial question. The music experience allowed them to immediately understand what it is you were saying, even if they never did the expression before.
Yes. Listen, it's interesting that you said, you know, being from the Caribbean, it was not a hindrance, it wasn't a disadvantage, it was actually the push. So I think if we all kind of leaned into that a little bit more, then we won't take the experiences for granted, and we won't take ourselves and our talents for granted. We won't think that this is how we do it here, and this is very nice and comfortable. If I take the leap of faith and I go across there and I be myself in the most authentic way possible, because I think knowing Andrew, he's one of those very rare souls that no matter what happens, Andrew will always be Andrew, and there are a lot of people who are like that. And once you just carry yourself in that authenticity as much as you can, and always, if you can, even in the work, even with the boy moment.
Have you seen the reverse? Have you seen anyone trying to play the role that they think they need to play in order to get ahead, and they're not necessarily being authentic in the spaces, the creative spaces you're in?
Yes, I think there are genuine people who are like that, you know, for sometimes the not so great reasons, but also sometimes, you know, I would say the music business is a cutthroat business. It's not an easy one at all. And just like in Trinidad, in the world at large, everyone knows everyone in the music business. And so sometimes people, you know, feel the need to sometimes, you know, put on a facade to get certain things. And I don't know, my personal opinion is people, human beings will respond when they get a sense of genuineness, when they see you as a person. And the higher I deal with people up the
hierarchy?
I don't want to say bureaucratic ladder, but the higher the position is, the more I realize that people, they want to deal with you on a very practical, humanistic level. And they want to get to know you as a person. And so, you know, I always endorse and try to encourage, just be you as a person, and people will respond to that.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Andrew. I think that's very important for all of us to learn, not just in the music business, but in all industries. I can say that.
Yeah, but you don't have to be abroad for that to matter. That could apply even if you're still here.
Exactly. That can apply even if you're still here. There's success locally as well. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It was greatly appreciated, and I know the audience is going to love it. I know we are all, as I speak for myself as your friend, I speak for DCFA people, I hope, and I speak for the Trinidad and Tobago, where we say we're very proud of you, and we wish you all of the best, all of the continued success in your endeavors. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Very proud, but come home soon.
Come home soon.
I will be.
Bring it back.
I'm yearning for doubles for the longest while.
boy.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed it as well.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. And this Trinidad and Tobago, thank you so much. We will be right back. Taking a quick break. Don't go away.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago, to Breakthrough. We're still here. Mark Anthony Peter, Sean Michael Small, enjoying the day, as we always do.
Speak for yourself.
Doom and gloom, all the time, all the time.
Listen, your day job is trying to uplift people and get them to achieve their dreams. My day job is to share the harsh truth and reality. So to be fair, Breakthrough is when I get a little bit of a break from my actual 5 days a week doom and gloom, except, you know, the arts community could use a little slap of reality every now and then, get themselves in gear, you know, build themselves up with some proper elbow grease, you know what I mean?
That was
You know
so
what I mean?
intense.
That's right.
It's so intense
That's what I
too
do.
quickly.
That's what I do.
All the time. You see, black and white, not like shucks. I apologize. Anyway, let's move swiftly along. We have with us, joining us in studio, a very good friend of mine and a very talented young man. We have with us, joining us in studio, actor and singer, Adrian. Good morning, Adrian.
Good morning. Wow, what a start, what an introduction. Well, I don't know what to say, but thank you so much for having me.
Oh yes, thank you for being on. So let's get straight into it, moving swiftly past it. So first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. I woke
Lovely.
up this morning, feeling real good today.
Nice.
3 little birds on your dresser.
Of course. Singing sweet songs.
Melodies beyond true.
3 kiss kitty. Anyway, so here we go. So we're gonna put the spotlight, as is our segment, we're gonna put the spotlight on you a little bit. So from Trinidad, born and raised, right? And then,
And then.
and then,
And then,
Traitor.
fill in the blanks. And then what happened?
and then in 2019, my family and I decided to migrate to the United States.
Your family and you, or your parents said you're migrating with
Well,
us.
pretty much my parents did say I'm migrating. I had no choice. I had to just go, pew, and leave everything behind.
Oh, okay. Where you moved to?
I moved to Maryland, and
Okay.
I'm very close to Washington, D.C.
You could hear the accent.
Yeah, you know, he's trying.
No, because every time I ever talk to people, I'll be like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Maryland.
Oh, okay.
So I kinda-
So you're accustomed saying that sentence
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
but you
fine.
don't have to do that when you're down here.
I know, but it's hard. It's real hard to kind of differentiate the kind of pronunciations and things. So I hear from Maryland. Better.
Not really, but okay.
That's like you're trying hard to have a country dialect in Trinidad now, which, yeah.
Okay, that's why I just say I'm from Washington, D.C. better than Maryland, because I know about the accent, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
All
Fair
right.
enough,
yeah,
fair
I know
enough.
about the
So you went across in 2019, so you would have been like what, 15, 16?
Around 15 and 16
So,
years old.
so that's like you left at Form 3.
Pretty much.
So you went straight into like the middle of high school
Yeah,
across
I was
there.
in 10th grade. They wanted to put me down a grade to 9th grade because usually when you go to America and they see that you're from a different country or island, they tend to put you down a grade to get you up to speed of how they learn in the American system or whatever.
Right.
How it's different from the British system
Right.
that we have here. But I don't know what happened. I was just like the counselor I was with during the time was Trinidadian. I was really understanding of like my transcript from Trinidad and from where I went. So they bumped me back up to where I was supposed to be with everybody else in 10th grade.
Okay.
So I was really appreciative of that.
I
Because
guess that's a benefit of making sure that, you know, we're out there and we
Yeah.
could look out for
That's
each
the
other.
benefit of Trinidad being too fast. So they'll come and the council of Trinidad and be like, oh, you from Trinidad? You from Trinidad? I know it's you. You's a good one. You's a good one. I know it's you. You could go in 10th grade.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you moved across there. You're in college now, in
Yes.
university. What are you studying in university?
So currently, I'm studying a combined major of computer science and business with a minor in music and entrepreneurship.
That
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a
sound
lot.
like a major and a minor. That sounds like 4 things. And you know, usually in life,
And again, Mr. People,
you pick a path,
Right.
and maybe you might have something on the side. but you sound like, I still want to keep 4 doors open.
Yeah, that's pretty much it because I wanted to learn so much. It's like, oh, like it works so easy and whatever, you know. It's like, okay, let me take on a challenge. Still the same. Let me take on our next challenge. And, you know, it just went from there.
Is that you low-key boasting, you know?
No, not at all, not at all. It's, I like to learn. I love to learn. And going up there, I like to learn about the different culture and then different, like the way they teach like computer science and business and whatever compared to here because I learned business here before I left.
Okay.
Right. I mean, computer science is a whole different. The thing with business, I would always say, business courses will teach you things that seem obvious when you learn it. Except if you don't go through a business course and you actually try to run a business, all of a sudden, what would be obvious, right? It's obvious in hindsight, but it's not obvious up front.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
But music and computer science. So how do you have time for all of this?
Well, so the good thing about this school is that you have a really great advisor. And I told them all about my interests and what I really am fascinated in doing. And I was like, I sing. I used to sing. I used to go choir and whatever when I was back here. And I'm like, how do I incorporate that when I'm up there? And they were like, oh, you can try a music minor. It's only, 12 more credits, which is like 4, 8, 12, 3 classes, 3 extra more classes. So I was like, okay, I can put it under my belt for a minor. And I was like, I also love business and I would love to be a business owner one day. So I was like, let me also minor in entrepreneurship. Yeah. So that I can learn those different aspects. So it's not really much. Maybe I have to take a semester extra to complete those, but it's really not that more than I expected to do. And now with that being said, I do, with that like extracurricular stuff, I do acting now to really emphasize like, okay, I have the singing traits, I have the dancing traits, and now to finish off the thespian in me.
Not the trifecta.
Right, to finish off the thespian, I want to do the acting. Okay. And that's something I recently got into.
Okay, so what sort of like projects have you been involved in?
So thankfully, I've been able to book a Netflix film recently by Robert De Niro. It was his new film. It's coming out. It's called 0 Day.
Are you allowed?
Yeah, no, I'm allowed to say. Don't worry. I signed the contract, but I'm allowed to say.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Need to make sure.
Yeah, no, it's called 0 Day, and it's coming out. And I had a little spotlight in that film. I can't say much, but I had a little scene in that film that I'm really, really excited to see when it comes out.
And in terms of like, so that's probably like the biggest you've had so far.
Yeah, that's movie-wise, but everything else-wise, I do commercials.
Okay.
Yeah.
So promos and stuff like that?
Pretty much. And there was this one commercial that I did, and it was super fascinating. I've collabed with this K-pop band group called TXT. Yeah. It was so weird, and I don't have a manager, so I find in this normally, like every day, like looking on Facebook groups, looking on acting websites, and it's so hard, but like, I just really push myself to do that. And then I never expected to find that ad because it didn't say anything about collabing with any major K-pop band or group.
It just literally said,
it just said,
need it or whatever.
Yeah, it just said a commercial shoot. And I was like, okay, let me apply. And next day, they sent me an email back, sent me a headshot and reel and resume and whatever. And I did, and then all of a sudden I got the invitation of, okay, you have this role with this major K-pop band group. Oh, wow. And I was just like mind blown after that.
So you're a Trinidadian in America shooting a commission with a K-pop band.
Right, yeah. I know, it's a lot going on, but I talk in the American accent now so I can blend in with them so they can't figure out that Trinidadian.
So we could blend in.
But when it come out, you know. But you know, people will be like, "What did you say?" You know, what are you talking about? You know.
Okay.
So,
but I have a question though. So in between university, when you got in 10th grade of high school, usually American high schools do have at least some of them, right? Music programs, of course.
Yeah.
The usual story is they might get cut first when they have budget problems. Did you have exposure to music programs in high school up there before college, or was that on a hiatus?
No. So I did join a chorale group in high school. That was the first thing I ever did. My aunt was the one who actually pushed me to join the chorale group because they was having this this theater play called Into the Woods. And I was super nervous. I was super shy. This is my first time going into this. And she just pushed me and she said, go ahead, audition. I auditioned for it, and I got the role of Rapunzel's prince and the wolf too, because there's 2 wolves in the play. And that was my first ever breakthrough into the acting kind of theatrical scene. Okay. So that's when I first got exposure. It was in high school.
Wow.
First week of joining high school, they had the audition for the play.
And what are some of the things, because that's definitely that would have been a new experience and exciting. What are some of the things that you kind of took away from it, that you learned?
Well, a lot of things that I learned is that I'm pretty good at improv when I didn't
Okay.
when I never did improv before.
Okay.
So that's something I learned, and with being in choir here in Trinidad, I kind of got exposed to having that stage fright being taken away. So when I was in front of the stage for the first time ever performing, I kind of felt natural. I kind of felt like this is me. You know, this is something I really enjoy doing, and I would really love to do it in college. But there's this little thing where you can't go to college for acting, you can't go to college for singing or whatever. So that's what prompted me to do acting on the side and outside of college. Although I can take classes to learn more about it, it wouldn't really contribute to my, I guess, main passion or whatever.
Sure.
But I'm still finding out what I like to do, you know? So.
I mean, I do find it interesting that with regards to acting, the deeper you go into acting, the more it is, you know, you could use the big words, it's about human condition. Well, the funny thing about that is you kind of have to know what humans do to understand human condition.
Yeah.
And if all you study is acting, then all you know is what actors do.
Right.
And that is probably one of the least normal things of the human condition. How do I embody somebody else? That's not the everyday human drama.
Actually,
no, it's not.
I will challenge you on
No,
that
it's
a little
not.
bit, because there are a lot of people walking around pretending to be somebody that they're not.
That's true, but they don't use the tools actors use.
Fair.
They don't use the tools actors use. They use different tools, and a good chunk of it might be lacking in mental health, but it is what it is. It is what it is, right? And some of it might be coping mechanisms, right? But it's not acting, because I do find like one of the criticisms for activists is that reporters will be like, and then the actors come in and they give their opinion, which is usually uninformed because they don't know nothing about nothing, and they just mucks the whole thing up. Whereas, you know, like in my position, I think it's a benefit to me having experience outside of not just doing a journalism degree, if that makes sense. And for you as an actor now, you could kind of understand, well, this is the working world, this is what business is like, this is what entrepreneurship is like, this is what certain realities are like. So if you get a role now where it's like, be somebody who's struggling or whatever, you're not just, well, I saw whoever, you kind of understand, you can actually internalize, okay, this is why this person might have this amount of stress.
So with that being said, it all dials back to, I actually took a workshop once about acting, and it really made me understand the business of acting as well. So there's two parts of acting. There's the business of acting, and there's the actual craft.
Right.
Breaking down the character, trying to relate them to your own experiences, even though you can't really relate to what the character genuinely went through. You have an idea of what is really broken down into that same character. They give you all these experiences and all these things. It's like a little, what do you call it? A retreat, right?
Okay.
You go away and you have to study the craft yourself. You have to really break it down to yourself and be like, okay, this is my new character. I'm no longer Adrian. I am this character, you know, whoever roles will be given to you. And it'll give you a very long description of what this character entails entirely. That's one thing I learned about character breakdown, and then there's script breakdown, and then the business of acting. Most times when people go into acting, they neglect the business of acting, and that mostly entails everything that you're going to go into, like how much, like what is a fair rate, what kind of businesses you can go into, what to really look up to avoid scams and whatever. That's something, if I did not learn that before getting into acting, I probably wouldn't have been in the position I was at right now.
Okay.
And like fair rate also goes both ways. It's like not to be underpaid, but also not to be overly demanding.
Yes.
And then they're like, well, why are we going to bother with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like fake it till you make it, you know? That's something we always learn, especially as Trinidadians.
I don't know what Trinidadians do. I think Trinidadians are more like complacent, and the money will somehow find its way into my pocket. That's what I think Trinidadians. No offense, Trinidadians. No offense.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of things that really went down when it came to learning acting. Obviously I went into it and I'm like, okay, I want to do acting, but what can I do to make sure I protect myself when going into acting? And something during the time that I just learned, well, not now, but previously, is that, you know, SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Guild?
The guild.
They recently went through a strike because of underpaying actors, and that's what prompted me to be like, why are they going through a strike? And that's what made me understand more of the business of acting. So I'm thankful those things happened during that time, because it made me understand, oh, they're underpaying actors, they're underpaying writers. No, the writers are not getting the proper you know, acknowledgements that they should, as the actors did, you know. So a lot of that contributed to my journey, and I'm truly appreciative of what I've went through so far because of that.
Okay. Now, if let's say as you get older, a young actor, but an actor comes to you, and you know, he or she asks you for any sort of advice that you can give. What sort of guidance or what sort of advice would you give to them?
If a young actor, aspiring actor came to me,
Yeah.
that's a good one because there's so much I can say. It's just, where should I start from, you know? Because being in that same position as well, I would say to, how can I say this? I would say to continue to be yourself while in that journey because it's very easy to lose yourself emotionally, mentally, especially when you know you're going to get that role. I would say obviously start in theater because that's a great way, especially how I started, especially how a lot of other actors started is in theater. And then crawl your way through theater to go into acting. Although there are two different compartments, it's very different. Theater acting and film acting is just two different things. Okay. Theater acting gives you that position where you can give yourself that confidence, I would say. That's a piece of advice I would give. And to try to get an agent or manager if you're brand new so that you get some guidance into it if you don't have any connections to anybody who are in the film industry.
Yeah, I do recall you did say you don't have an agent.
I do not. I do not because, you know.
You know? So this is, he knows your first time. He doesn't have one. Do what I say, not what I get.
Not as I do. But I guess, because I'm guessing that there may be a lot of scams out there.
Yes, there are a lot of scams. And definitely in the business of acting because the reason why I did not need an agent is because I almost mastered the craft of understanding the business side of acting. Okay. Because everyone neglects it basically. And thankfully, I took a leap of faith and I messaged an Instagram actor that was on the Thundermans, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, you know what? I now started acting. I'm going to try to message people and whatever. So I messaged them and they actually got back to me. Okay. I had a whole thing be like, hey, he was a new actor too, but now he's getting more films, main roles. And he gave me a bunch of advice. Okay. I truly appreciate it. His name is Connor. I don't know if I want to say his full name, but you know, he's a great guy. He actually guided me through it without needing an agent or manager. But that's me. That's myself pushing myself to message people.
So what I hear you say is courage, determination, and some level of resilience as well.
Pretty much.
Because you're probably at the start you're gonna hear the word no more than you hear the word yes.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. When you get rejected, it feels like wow, it's because. In film, they look at you. They look at your character, your facial things, your graphics, whatever. Anyways, it's like they look at you and getting that no, it's heartbreaking. But after a while, you have to remember, like what I learned is that you just have to submit and forget. Submit and forget what they do. Forget. To even think about like the rejection if you get accepted. Just submit and forget it. And that's
because even in big movies, for every role, there are a lot of relatively big name actors who got told no. It's not just, you're too small, right? I mean, no one's comes to mind, but you always read for certain projects, there'll be like 5 or 6 Hollywood A-ish listed celebrities of whatever age, demographic bracket and gender who were all off for this role. There was like 5 young actresses trying to get this role. Obviously only one of them could get it. And then when you look at it now, you could be like, oh yeah, they all kind of look different enough where I could see where the directors and producers will pick one person specifically and their personalities will be different enough and their aura. But then the flip side, of course, is also it's the body of work. Sometimes they get stereotyped. Do you get stereotyped a little bit?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a hard pill I had to swallow, especially now going into the industry. I would often get told that, you know, I'm Indian presenting, South Asian presenting and stuff. And yes, it may seem my ancestors or whatever was South Asian, and you know, explain to be Trinidadian or from the islands, it's really hard for other people to understand. It's like, oh wow, you're
they are non-black people in the Caribbean,
right? You know, it's fascinating. It's like when people say like, oh, you're Jamaican. No, I'm Trinidadian. You know, we have similar accents.
No. The worst part is right because the few times that I travel, the question always was, what part of Jamaica is that in?
Right, exactly. The same question every single time. It's always like, wow, what part of Jamaica are you from? I'm like,
you know, the sad part is they don't. I'm pretty sure they don't ask us about the Bahamas. They don't ask us about Barbados.
No,
they don't ask us about Puerto Rico, right? They don't ask us about Grenada. But somehow Trinidad and Tobago, at one point, the richest, biggest island, you know, they even had a Miss Universe. Just saying. We've had more than one Miss Universe and a Miss World in Trinidad and Tobago, right? But who knows about Trinidad?
When he was in high school, they thought he was Mexican.
They did think I was Mexican. Yeah, they thought I was Dominican actually.
I mean, to be fair, I go for I get either Puerto Rican or Syrian.
Okay.
Or maybe Portuguese, maybe. I'm not, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're not sure. Because the actual local Syrian immigrants here, they're like, well, he's not Syrian, so he's something else.
Right.
Something else.
They're
Now,
always guessing. They're always guessing
Yeah,
to see where
of
you're
course.
from.
Now, I do have to wrap up really quickly.
Okay.
But one last question. How, and it's a question that I ask a lot of people, how do you define success?
Wow. Yeah. I need some time to think about that, you know?
Well, you have like less than a minute.
How do I define success?
Yeah.
Well, success entirely entails what you do and what you make of it to want to succeed entirely. Like, what are you going to do to want to succeed entirely? So I always think about the different aspects of like, okay, how am I going to push myself to succeed? Am I going to come out of my comfort zone and get out of my bubble and make myself known, or like make myself somebody that entirely wants to achieve this thing without looking too cocky or whoever, not looking too like, you know, like you're pushing yourself now, but you want to like be humble at the same time. So I define success as being humble and sort of getting out of your comfort zone
Okay.
to really embrace that character that you're building for yourself.
Okay, nice. Hear that, young people? These are the things. Right from somebody, right from your own. Even though he, you know, spending some time over there and he could code switch when you want. From your own, all right?
Yeah. If you didn't think it was a traitor before, just wait for him to pull out the accent.
Oh my gosh. Adrian, it's been a pleasure.
To be fair, if you want to be an actor, you probably do have to migrate.
You
at
do
some
have
point.
to, you know, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we're gonna sort of come to the end of the show, but before we do, we have a little clip of Adrian and somebody else performing with him, performing How to Save a Life, a cover by The Fray. Hope you enjoy this clip. Have a wonderful week out there, Trinidad and Tobago. Continue to support our actors. Continue to love them and show them all the support that you can. Bye-bye.
Step one, you say we need to talk. He walks, you say sit down, it's just a talk. He smiles politely back at you. You stare politely right on through some sort of window to your right as he goes left and you stay right between the lines of fear and blame. You begin to wonder why you came. Where did I go wrong? I lost a friend somewhere along in the bitterness, and I would have stayed up with you all night had I known how to save a life. Let him know that you know best, 'cause after all you do know best. Try to slip past his defense without granting innocence. Lay down a list of what is wrong, the things you've told him all along, and pray to God he hears you, and I pray to God he hears you. And where did I go wrong? I lost a friend somewhere along in the bitterness, and I would have stayed up with you all night had I known how to save a life. How to save a life. How to save a life. How to save a life.
WESN.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
The first challenge was finding a job. It's really complicated. First, because of the lack of papers, and also psychologically, because it means you're starting a new life. You wonder to what extent you're abandoning your old life to start a new one. But I can't just put aside this war and pretend that it doesn't still impact me, because most of my family lives in Ukraine. My cousin is currently on the front lines, and recently my Ukrainian uncle sacrificed his life in this fight.
Ernest Mazak fled Russia on March 7, 2022, months before the mobilization order. This jurist and human rights defender is a longtime opponent of Vladimir Putin. And at the start of the war, the Russian president launched a ruthless crackdown on his critics. Russians can be sentenced to 15 years in prison for spreading alleged lies about the conflict. And Ernest had publicly opposed the war on social media.
I had three options: go to prison, commit suicide, or leave. I decided that the first two options were not very responsible considering my family and the values I fight for. I figured that by choosing political immigration, a specialist like me could find work to do in the domain of human rights. Sadly, there are also violations in France, so I decided to leave.
Today is a big day for Ernest. Almost 2 years after his arrival in France, he's coming to pick up his 10-year residence permit at the prefecture in Angers, in the west of France. A small card that will make his life a whole lot easier.
Thank you, France. I'm very happy. It's a relief. It means I can look for a better job, because employers, of course, prefer this card over a piece of paper valid for just 3 months. And it will allow me to get a travel permit and go to Turkey, for example, where my mother could meet me.
Because Ernest had to leave his family behind. His mother, but also his wife, his 23-year-old son who's studying in Moscow, and his 18-year-old daughter with intellectual disabilities. As he waits for his wife and daughter to join him in Angers, he's been navigating through various administrative issues thanks to a specialized educator and an automatic translator.
You need to anticipate requesting healthcare for your wife and your daughter. Ernest is very different from the other asylum seekers and refugees. He can handle most of his administrative procedures alone. He's very, very autonomous. I rarely worked with someone like him, and it's great.
I started fighting for democracy in Russia when I was 17. So I have a lot of experience working with administrators, and in conditions that were, of course, much worse than in France.
Nastya Radionova is also one of the 2,600 Russians who sought asylum in France in the first year of the invasion. A political journalist turned writer, she had to start over when she arrived in Paris in April 2022. Not knowing how to speak French, art has been a way for her to express herself.
It's the first time I've worked with plaster strips. I like it.
Nastya often collaborates on artistic projects with her husband, Dmitry Korliansky, a contemporary music composer. In April 2022, just after the start of the war, the couple was invited to France by a theater company to put on an opera they'd written and composed together.
We left with our 3 children, 3 suitcases, and that's it. And we stayed here without knowing if we were going to stay in Paris, because it wasn't clear. It wasn't planned in advance.
From the outside, leaving Russia might seem like a difficult decision, but it was very obvious. When the war started, I had no doubt that we had to leave and take our children with us. Because the alternative was to go to prison. Because I'd taken part in anti-war political actions and I couldn't and wouldn't be silent.
Refusing to be silenced and moving forward without looking back.
The opera we brought to France was Eurydice. It was basically about the same situation. You can't look back. You need to escape hell. So it's connected.
It's a twist of fate, because my father was a dissident during the time of the USSR. He was imprisoned. Now he's 78, and his daughter has left Russia because of her own anti-Russian activities. Now I've become an enemy of the people. What's important is that my children will know I didn't remain silent, and they'll grow up with that. They'll know that they can't be silent. I'm happy they're growing up in France. My eldest son recently went to a little protest, and I'm happy that he has that opportunity here.
Alexei has also been going to protests as an amateur photographer.
I was always fascinated by protests in France. That's not Russian at all. Because if it were in Russia, that guy would have been shot down on sight.
Alexei has no regrets about leaving Russia. But if he wants to keep his status as a refugee in France, he'll have to give up going home, even briefly, to visit his mom or his sister.
I'm angry at Putin on a personal level, because he stole my life. He didn't steal it physically, but you could say he took everything from me except my life, and my right to express myself in other countries, places where it's allowed, in normal countries.
Ernest is learning French and helping other exiles defend their rights, whether they be Russians like him or Ukrainians like Olga. Born with disabilities, she had to flee her home in eastern Ukraine, another life upended by the war.
Trust is our most precious asset. Every day, around the world, France 24, RFI and Monte Carlo Doualier join forces to bring you free, independent, verified, balanced information that fights manipulation, and in 21 languages. France Média Monde has been awarded the Journalism Trust Initiative Standard, which guarantees the professionalism and reliability of our international news media with a score of 100%. Trust is not automatic. It must be earned and cultivated. Thank you for your trust.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Hi, I'm Anthony Mills, Vienna correspondent for France 24. There's more to Austria than mountains, lakes and coffee houses, as wonderful as they are. Vienna is a seat of the United Nations and hosts international organizations, so there's plenty of high-profile diplomacy to cover. And every now and then, Austrian national politics goes global.
Anthony Mills, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Jenny Shin with the headlines for you this hour. Thousands are ordered to evacuate from the suburbs of Athens as wildfires ravage forests north of the Greek capital. Authorities say containing the blaze is difficult due to strong winds. Ukraine now says around 1,000 square kilometers of Russia's Kursk region is now in its control, as Moscow still scrambles to push back the incursion. Paris hands the baton to Los Angeles as the Olympic Games comes to a close. The star-studded ceremony ending with an apt finale appearance from a Hollywood A-lister. Well, France has bid farewell to a fortnight of the Olympic Games. The closing ceremony on Sunday brought together athletes, officials, volunteers and visitors for a final celebration. The handover of the flame was one befitting the next host, Los Angeles, home to Hollywood, with none other than action star Tom Cruise jumping off the roof of Stade de France to kick off the honours. But it's not all over just yet, as the Paralympics is set to begin in just about 2 weeks' time. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron gave a nod to the organisers of the Games and everyone who's made it possible. Take a listen.
For years, months, weeks, everyone told us that it couldn't be done, that the opening ceremony was madness, that security couldn't be guaranteed, that the Seine wouldn't be swimmable, that the French could never be in the top 5 of the medal table. We've heard a lot of experts over the past few years say that everything you've done over the last few weeks was impossible. And well, thank you, because you've done it. So well done to all of you.
Well, as the Paris Olympics draw to a close, it's time now to look at their cost and benefits. Yuka Raya from a business desk joins me now on set to give us an update on whether the Summer Games have been brought to the host city. Yuka, ahead of the Olympics, there were some worries with hotels in the French capital struggling with low demand. Now we finally have some positive figures.
Well, Jenny, organisers have held a record-breaking Summer Games, both on and off the field, with more than 9.5 million out of 10 million tickets being sold. Some 11.2 million visitors took part, with or without tickets, in Olympic-related activities between the 23rd of July and the 11th of August, according to the City of Paris's tourism office. Now, during this same period, hotel occupancy rose to 84% after disappointing first weeks of July, and even higher for luxury hotels. Other cities that hosted certain games like Lille, Marseille and Châteauroux also saw the occupancy rate rise by 16 to 18% compared to normal times. Not everyone, though, enjoyed the windfall. Parisian taxi drivers, for instance, complain about tourists preferring to use public transport, and restaurants further away from competition venues say their sales have actually declined, Jenny.
Well, Paris had vowed to host cheaper games. Did it keep its promise?
Well, in terms of numbers, yes, with the final budget coming in at just under 9 billion euros. The Paris Olympics are said to be the cheapest since the Sydney Games in 2000. France sought to reduce costs by minimising new construction. The Aquatic Centre is the only new permanent facility built for the occasion. But the final costs, partly due to higher inflation, still massively overshot the initial budget of 6.2 billion euros when Paris bid for the Games in 2017. Analysts warn that when additional indirect costs are taken into account, such as security and personnel costs, as well as the 1.5 billion euros spent on improving the water quality of the River Seine to make it clean enough to swim, the final price tag could match or overtake London's. Yes, there are some benefits, though, of hosting the events, but it will take time to tally them. Money from big sponsorships, sponsorship deals and broadcast rights will go to the International Olympic Committee, while Paris can claim ticket sales and domestic sponsorships. The government can collect more hotel taxes, and then eventually sales of apartments in the Olympic Village could raise funds.
I guess the big question that remains now is it worth hosting the Olympic Games?
Well, that's the big question, and it has been forever. After all, Paris faced almost no competition in its bid to host the Games because other cities were too worried that doing so could plunge them into financial ruin, like in the case of Rio and Athens. Now, Olympics have never delivered on budget. According to Foundation IFRAP, the most staggering cost overrun was in Beijing in 2008. The Paris Olympics does look to be the most compact over the past 20 years, but the cost estimate here is the official final budget, not the actual cost, which could be higher, as I mentioned earlier. An Oxford University study released in May says that even though the IOC has initiated reform to take a more frugal approach, things are going in the wrong direction. Actually, cost overruns were decreasing until 2008, but have increased since then, threatening the Games' viability. Even the reuse of existing facilities, both in Tokyo and Paris, have not had the desired effect, according to the group's assessment.
All right, thank you so much for that update, our business editor, Yuko Raye. Thanks a lot. Well, to Greece next, where multiple evacuation orders have been issued as wildfires ravage the northern fringes of the capital. The blaze began Sunday afternoon and has been touring through forests, which have been left tinder dry after the country saw the hottest June and July ever recorded. Authorities say strong winds are hampering efforts to contain the blaze. Meanwhile, France says it's sending 180 firefighters of its own as reinforcement. Oliver Ferry reports.
Just 30 kilometres northeast of Athens, a gigantic ball of fire lights up the night sky. The village of Varnavas, surrounded by forest and olive groves, has been beset by large wildfires, which authorities say are still not under control.
The front of the fire is really huge, and it is uncontrollable right now. Behind these mountains are all the olive groves. All of the olives are burned, and this year was a good one for oil.
Fire services declared about 40 fires over the weekend. Firefighters are battling the flames, both on the ground and in the air.
The situation is chaotic. Our military unit has been here from the beginning, and we're trying to help the fire unit and the volunteer teams. You can see we're surrounded by fire here. The night will be very hard.
Authorities ordered fresh evacuations on Monday morning. Over the weekend, residents in the historic city of Marathon were evacuated, and also in Varnavas itself. Some residents are insisting upon staying to try to save what they can.
My family has left, but I'm staying nearby so I can go to see my house.
On Sunday, winds reached up to 90 kilometres per hour. Conditions